Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with the Average Joe Sports Show, and we talk Fred's future, Nebraska basketball.
Hi, it's Bill Doleman. The Huskers' march toward March is looking sweet.
Turning to football, Mitch Sherman here. We're going to talk about Nebraska's new documentary series, Chasing 3.
It's also Elijah Herbel here as we'll talk Nebraska's series victory over Grand Canyon down in Phoenix over the weekend.
Welcome to it. It's episode 32 of the Average Joe Sports Show, the AJ Sports Pod, the AJ Sports Show. Find both and subscribe on Twitter and Facebook, Spotify and iTunes. Mitch Sherman, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, and Chris Schmidt. Guys, busy week, and we keep talking about dancing shoes, and Husker basketball keeps flexing their muscles. How are we doing this Monday night as we tape?
I'm good, Schmitty. I know you got some visitors there in the room with you, so congrats on the new addition to the family.
Yeah, thank you. It is a Bernedoodle is what we got. Surprise, happy birthday is what my wife and son told me.
How big does that thing get?
He'll get it 80 pounds.
Oh yeah, just 80 pounds. So a good lap dog for you. Yeah.
He's half going to be half Bernese Mountain Dog, half poodle, so he doesn't shed. And Carson brought him up from his lair downstairs when I got home from the Nebraska game last night. I was talking to you in the hallway at PBA. Fast forward 30 minutes later, we have a third soon-to-be 80-pound member of the family. The Labradoodle Roz, she's the eldest, the big sister at 7. She is sideways and passed out. We may or may not hear Gertie the German Shepherd with her squeaky toys. And then you may or may not hear my wife swearing in our bedroom, not the first or last time.
Pause.
And that is where Sterling is hanging out right now.
Yeah, you had to say that, and then let's move on.
so three 80-pound dogs. Hello, pup. Goodbye, wallet. Got it. Yeah.
So yeah, our dogs are a big part of the show. I know. So, but nobody can hold a candle to your canine collection, Schmitty. I got my little 10-pounder. Yeah, it is. I got a big bark sometimes here if the UPS driver comes while we're taping a show, but no comparison to what's going on at your little animal emporium there.
So the show's gone to the dogs. Without a doubt.
Yeah. I just can't get over Schmitty bragging about making his wife say curse words in the bedroom. You really had to throw that one in there, huh?
It's for Average Joe After Dark.
Yeah, it is.
Reminds me of Doug McDermott. Did you guys see his interview with Barstool this week?
I didn't.
Where he talked about how he recruited Doug McDermott.
Oh, yeah. Yes, yeah.
About how Greg recruited Doug, you're saying?
Sorry. Yeah, I may have misspoken. But he said, well, I sleep with his mom, so that really helped.
It's usually not something that would work in your favor as a coach, but in this case, it did.
I can think of a few football coaches back in the day that might have been proud about that, but that's another show for another time. Yeah. I think we all have a couple of them in mind too, as I say that.
That's for Average Joe's off the record.
Here.
So I think the Husker basketball team.
Thanks for saying
great win. Yeah.
Mitch is going to reach behind himself in the Mitch Sherman bar area.
And I'm going to pour myself a drink. I'm just going to start doing shots while we're on the air here. Can we do that? You guys, I wish I could give you guys some. I don't even need to reach behind me. I got it right down here. I can just pull it out. I don't know what this is here, but it's all ready to go.
Locked and loaded, one in the chamber.
Mm-hmm.
This is the episode where we ruin Mitch's esteemed reputation as a professional journalist.
I'm not worried about it. Let's talk some hoops, guys.
Computer problems. Mitch has left the show tonight. Hey, what a win, though. And Nebraska basketball notches win 20. Now 10-7 in Big Ten play. Still fighting for a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. Still work to do. Ohio State is suddenly flexed a little bit. Huge win for them on the road at Michigan State. So that's who Nebraska has Thursday. But guys, Nebraska has looked different. We talked about how they play, and usually it's kind of been their offense and their clutch shot making that's been a headline this season, specifically in the Wisconsin and Purdue wins this year. But they've shown some grittiness, some toughness going back to Indiana. It traveled on the road. It's always been there at PBA, but they dominated Penn State, and it wasn't a wow win. They just overwhelmed them. And then they did it again with a pretty impressive performance against Minnesota, who's, they've been right there. And Fred Hoiberg was absolutely right, saying they were probably, top 2 candidates to be the hottest team in the Big Ten coming into PBA. They'd won 5 of 7 and really played Purdue well. They were up 10 points in the second half with their last road outing, couldn't hang on. So, hey, Nebraska is looking and feeling a little bit different as we end February into March.
Yeah, there's not really any question now who the hottest team in the Big Ten is, and it's Nebraska with 4 consecutive wins, all by 15 points or more. We got the note last night after the news conference from Keith Mann via Seamus McKnight that it's the first time since the 1911-12 team, the first time that Nebraska has won 4 straight league games by 15 points or more. So that's 112 years ago, if you want to do the math.
And that conference was the Missouri Valley.
It was the Mo Valley. They were in the Mo Valley North, and they had a couple of wins against Drake in that stretch. I think Iowa State was a conference foe at that time, and the coach was Jumbo Steam, who also coached the football team, and he won conference championships with both.
And that was before conference realignment.
Yeah, I think there was some conference realignment back in those days, but it was slightly different than the way we experience it now. No, but I mean, I'll be quick here and just say that Nebraska has been dominant in its last 4, and this is kind of what we saw as a best case scenario back in early February. Remember, Nebraska had that stretch of 4 games that were all really tough, and it ended. It wasn't just the opponents; it was the time off between the games and the going from the road to home. And you had at Illinois and Wisconsin at home in that stretch, at Maryland, at Northwestern, and you were kind of maybe feeling a little bit down about Nebraska coming out of that. But my thought was, okay, things are the skies are about to brighten, and I didn't envision it like this, like 4 consecutive wins, all in comfortable fashion in different ways. We talked last week about how good it was for Nebraska to win that Indiana game like that. It was good on Sunday night at PBA for Nebraska to win the Minnesota game in the way that it did, going away without any kind of shooting from Keisei Tominaga, CJ Wilcher, or Rink Mast. So they've been maybe Nebraska's 3 most consistent shooters all year, and they didn't make a 3 between them, and still Nebraska won by 18 points.
I thought I was watching an old school Indiana team coached by Bob Knight yesterday in Nebraska's win over Minnesota. They were crisp, even though Tominaga and Wilcher were not making shots, and Mast was 3 of 12 from the floor, but still they were all involved defensively and offensively in the way they cut, move the ball around. 8 guys are playing right now. This is not a deep rotation. They've got 8 guys that are playing. And even though Tominaga's shot isn't falling like it had been at PBA, and Wilcher certainly is not having that 9-game stretch that he had, you expect that that's going to come around. Sam Hoiberg didn't score a point either, but he affects the game in so many ways. But those old school Bob Knight teams at Indiana, when you would watch them on Big Monday or Super Tuesday, when that was the only college basketball on ESPN during the midweek, they were so disciplined. The motion offense, it wasn't really necessarily a true big man, but they just passed the ball. And the same, they played the same kind of ball at Texas Tech when I went down there, and I got to call those games and see those a little more up close and personal. But they're just rugged, they're crisp, they're playing disciplined, and I'm impressed when the guys aren't scoring that they're still involved in the offense. They're getting open looks. If Alec goes 9-8 every game like he did against Minnesota, that's perfect for him. Juwan Gary, it's another one of those days where somebody steps up and has a sort of career game. It wasn't eye-opening like, Mass when he had his 36. But, we also forget that, that Rutgers game, Gary went out. And it was thought that he might be lost for the season. Remember how how scary that was for the Nebraska's prospects for the year. Then he was out for 3-4 games, and was it the Northwestern game at home where he came back on the floor in the first half and was a little timid, I thought, going up and down the floor. The second half was typical Juwan Gary. He's the heart and soul of that team, no doubt about it. And they would not be where they are right now, headed to the Sweet 16 without Juwan Gary.
And let's give some credit to Fred Hoiberg too, because one of the things I saw was like the switch. People talking about on Twitter, the switch Fred Hoiberg made from Iowa State to the Big Ten, where he went from this spread, fun, 3-point shooting offense to a rugged defensive Big Ten team. And I don't think that perfectly encapsulates what Fred Hoiberg's done, because it's deeper than that. It's not just flipping to a Big Ten system. He's married the best of the Iowa State offense, I should say, with the ruggedness of the Big Ten. And it took him, what are we going to say now, 4 years to figure out how to perfectly kind of meld those two things together. But he's found the formula this season with an offense that spreads the ball out. You have a big man that can shoot, that can handle, and not to mention really lock down defensively as well. The length that they have 2 through 5 is impressive. Like, I don't want that to get swept under the rug here, because there are a lot of great basketball players on this team, but you got to give Fred Hoiberg for having the vision to put these guys together and understand that these are the guys that are going to be able to marry what he did offensively at Iowa State with what he needs to do defensively within the Big Ten. That's a big thing, and I don't want that to get lost, because hats off to Fred Hoiberg for that.
Elijah, you'll be happy to read my story Tuesday on The Athletic about Fred Hoiberg. And I watched Trev Alberts on Sunday night stand outside the locker room before the game and greet the Huskers as they came back in from the floor to after warmups. And then again in the tunnel at the end of the game, Trev was down there shaking everyone's hands, waiting for Fred to come in, embracing Fred, going into the locker room after the game. Trev sat on the court for the game, for much of the game Sunday night. He was with Heinrich Harburg and Harper Murray after the dunk contest, entertaining those two. But he was also about 20 feet away from the Nebraska bench. When you're an athletic director and you've got a coach who's got things going on like Fred Hoiberg does right now, you don't leave his side. You cozy up to Fred, and I think that they're probably going to be talking about extending that contract relatively soon. He's got 3 years left on his deal after this season. Remember a year ago, Fred Hoiberg took a pay cut. He had the undisclosed metrics that cost him $250,000 out of his deal, and it was restored this year because he met the metrics with that 16-16 record. And we don't know what the parameters were. It wasn't like Frost's deal where it was written down and it came out in a public records request. But he's not far away on a timeline from having coached for his job. And now you're talking about, I think, the leading candidate for Big Ten Coach of the Year, and somebody who, Nebraska is very fortunate to have in this position, because he's doing an incredible job for all the reasons, Elijah, that you mentioned, with the way that he's built this system and redefined his success as a coach.
And I think maybe most importantly is this season does not feel like a flash in the pan. It really feels like the build towards something that could potentially be even greater. I don't think Fred Hoiberg's going to get to the tournament and say, all right, I'm going to kick my feet up. I'm not going to go after guys in the transfer portal. He's found the type of guy he needs in the portal to make this work, and it feels like just the start. And obviously, going to the portal, a bit of a dangerous game. You're playing with fire, but something tells me what we see this season is not just a season. It feels like the foundation.
It's college basketball. You go to the portal, and Rick Mast has got a year of eligibility left. I don't know that I think it's less than 50-50 that he comes back because of his professional aspirations but how much easier is it going to be for Hoiberg now to go into the portal and look for a big guy who can run the system the way that Derek Walker did last year and the way that Mast has this year because of the success that those guys had in Fred's scheme.
I think another thing too with the change in philosophy, when Fred Hoiberg got hired, there was such a buzz about his NBA background, having played for such a long time and been in the league as a coach, and I think that the thought was Fred Hoiberg is here and he will get you to the league. And now I think it's with that change of philosophy in playing a little more rugged defensively and having a collegiate system, it's coaching guys to get to the tournament. And if you get to the tournament and you get to a successful plateau, they will notice you if you're good enough to get into the league. Getting into the NBA is one of the toughest jobs that you can possibly have. There's only 12 roster spots, right? So instead of coaching guys and getting the Bryce McGowans to come in because, he's one of the best players in the country, he's going to get you to the league, doesn't do well for, the college game necessarily and long-term success. And I think that has changed. I think it is coaching you to be successful as a team here and let the team success improve your individual resume and your individual stock. And I think that's played itself out. And there are guys on that roster right now that are they Bryce McGowan 5-star talent? No. But are they going to get a look because they played for Fred? They had a team that was successful? Absolutely, they're going to look now.
Yeah, and I think the way that he's done it now, where you got to do the team part first and build that team success in the way that they have, and use that as a vehicle then to allow yourself to recruit the kind of players who can fit into that system and might be a step higher in terms of their prospect level, who can then get you to the league. And if you can marry those two things, if he can build on the success that he's having right now with this group and the way that they play, and then add in somebody who's like a Hunter Salas kind of talent, not to just continually go back to the guys who were from the state of Nebraska, but you look at what he's doing at Wake Forest right now, and if it had been a few years later, maybe it's a different story. He is a future NBA player. And if you find the right one who can fit into your system, and I think Bryce McGowan's could have been that guy if he was 3 years, younger, or 2 years younger. But unfortunately, he came to Nebraska at a time where there just wasn't enough talent around him. So that's the next step for this program, is bringing in NBA talent to play in this kind of a system and surrounding it with guys like Bryce Williams and Keisei Tominaga and Juwan Gary and Rink Mast and all of the others that we see out there.
We talk a lot about development, fellas, on the football side of things, and we tip our cap quite a bit to Fred with his development. But think of the guys that he's brought in and have stayed. Look where Derek Walker and Sam Griesel. Griesel was a one-year guy, but still super important, kind of that foundation piece, right? Get a Nebraska kid to come back that's going to do the dirty work. You get Walker, and a Bandamel, high-profile guys, and I think a Walker being good enough to go to a Tennessee, right, and then having to reinvent himself. It's been fascinating to see Fred reinvent, go back to the drawing board. His offensive system and style still are what he wants to do, but he's always known defense, but he's really drilled down on it, and he's got buy-in with this crew, and you saw proof of concept with Indiana. And I hate to keep going back to that, but that's why they look good. Penn State, Indiana, and then what we saw last night. I mean, they are building, and his teams, whatever their records ended up being, they've always been a pain in the neck to face late February, going back now 3 years. So it's good to see him get paid off for making the change, getting the buy-in, and they're close to dancing time, which is really cool for Nebraska basketball.
Yeah, and the opportunity ahead of them now over these next 3+ games, 3+ the Big Ten tournament, is to get to a place on March 17th, Selection Sunday, where they're not on the bubble, where they're not worried about it. And that's the position they've put themselves in with these last couple of wins, the road win against Indiana and then an 18-point win on Sunday night is they don't have to be sweating it out on the 17th. They win 2 of these last 3 or all 3 of the last 3. And then even the Big Ten tournament probably is not a high pressure situation. They can start to get themselves in position to worry about that first round game. And what a luxury that is, one that Nebraska basketball has almost never enjoyed.
Not to be overlooked, and go back to what you mentioned a moment ago, Mitch, about Trev Alberts. He didn't hire Fred. And in the era of collegiate athletic administrators, often are people who didn't play the game or games. He inherited Fred Hoiberg. He inherited Scott Frost, and he had to make a change with football and brought in his guy. And by all accounts, that's gone reasonably well. But if Nebraska didn't have an athletic director with an athletic background like Trev Alberts, I think that there would have been a much quicker pull of the trigger to make a coaching change and bring in my guy and do something sexy. And Trev understanding the game, and I think understanding, Fred Hoiberg and probably being the kind of guy that you want to sit across the table with and have a conversation about whatever. So when I said he was going to look forward with Matt Rule, whoever he hired for a football coach is going to have to be somebody that he can have a personal, relationship with, talking about whatever. And I think that he probably has that with Fred Hoiberg. And so for Trev Alberts to not give in to pressure the way he did make the, somewhat controversial decision to cut the pay for a little while. But that says a lot about his relationship there, that without Trev Alberts, this isn't happening.
Do we need to get Bill Moose on the line to talk about what a great hire he made and the vision that he had back in 2019?
We can call Bill. He'll
answer.
Yeah, and he's good stuff. Here's my question, and I don't know, and Fred's not been asked this, and it's hard to read minds, but just for the room here, you can take it one of 2 ways if you're a coach at this level when you get Harbaugh'd, for lack of a better term, because it was first instituted by Michigan with a pay cut. You can hold it against your boss for doing that and kicking you in the backside, or you respond and your AD relationship is good. You may not like it, but you understand it. So my question out loud is, okay, great. You love me now that I got 20 wins. Thank you for sticking with me, by the way. Do you worry about any hard feelings with that pay cut 2 years ago?
Hoiberg doesn't strike me as the vengeful type, but it was no doubt, a little bit of an ego check, I'm sure, to have that happen. Now he won 24 games in his first 3 seasons. So I think as much as anyone, he, as a guy who coached and played in the NBA and
he gets it.
Played in the Big 12, he understands that it's a bottom line business. 2 of those first 3 seasons were marred by COVID. So there's a little bit of a forgiveness factor with that. I don't know how he feels about the way that all went down. But I do think it's a good idea, just in case he has a little bit of a memory there, to get on that to get on that business of making sure that he's secure and making sure that he's paid. Like, if you believe he's one of the better coaches in the Big Ten, in this new expanding Big Ten, then let's go ahead and pay him like that with all the money that you're getting from Fox. And it doesn't all have to go to football. If Nebraska wants to truly have an investment in basketball, which has never been its strong suit. The fans care about basketball. The administration has long said that it cares about basketball. It hasn't always acted like it cares about basketball. Here's an opportunity after an NCAA tournament season. It may end up a month from now that we're talking about the greatest season in Nebraska basketball history. Now, I'm ahead of myself with that, but obviously if they win a game in the first round of the tournament, you can build a statue for Fred Hoiberg outside of PBA. So they should be ready with the legal pad to draw something up, so that, who knows, it's college basketball, professional basketball, whatever it might be. can be a cutthroat business. And Fred's 51. I don't think he's looking to go anywhere. I think he loves Lincoln. I think his family's happy here. But make it worth his while so there's not even a decision to make. I think that'll be an important step. And I'm sure Trev Alberts is 5 steps ahead of me in understanding this. This is why he was part of the reason he was standing in the tunnel outside the locker room before and after the game on Sunday.
And we're talking Fred's salary right now, I believe 3.5.
3.5.
When you look at the top of the Big Ten, you have Tom Izzo at 6.2, and then Brad Underwood at 4.6. Nobody else makes $4 million a year aside from those two. But is 4 the number?
I would bet the Ohio State job is going to pay somebody well north of 4 if they want to move, I don't know, 1,000 miles to the east.
And I think Chris Collins probably gets paid pretty well after the success that he's had at Northwestern. His salary information is not public, but I mean, Fred's paid well then in that context. But like you said, Ohio State's is gonna up the ante, and Nebraska should strive to be competitive.
Mitch Sherman, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. It's the Average Joe Sports Show at the AJ Sports Pod. Find us on Twitter at the AJ Sports Show, on YouTube. Subscribe and like. Tell a buddy. Spotify and iTunes for the audio portion of this pod, and a lot to look forward to with basketball as we kind of wrap basketball. We've talked about Fred. We've talked about wins. We've talked about that grit. So now, as you guys have taken the pulse of students and friends and family and, listeners and fans, yes or no on the safe word? Is Nebraska safe right now? Do you still believe they can play their way out, or does it just take one more win?
Oh, I think they can play their way out. But, I saw your tweet calling me out the other day. I think what you were saying was that John Beilein didn't agree with my Sweet 16 assessment. He compared them to a team that went to the championship game.
That's right. He's calling BS, Bill Doleman.
Yeah, they're better than what I think.
He's not putting the parameters on just a Sweet 16 run that you predicted.
Here's what I would like to see, and it's not going to happen at this stage of the season. I think if Nebraska had one more in the rotation that was giving them, maybe 10, 15 minutes a game, maybe 8 points, just another. Right now they're at 8. And they made the move to bring Williams in and put Lawrence, bringing him out the bench. He's responded well. And, if they get the production back from Wilcher, he's probably not going to produce like he did in, 6 weeks ago. But, if they can get him back to a 10-point clip, Mast has got to shoot better than 50%, not 3 for 12. Then I think Nebraska's in a good spot. But I think for as rugged as March can get, and you don't have any experience in it, it is a different animal. I think just to have a 9th guy giving you quality minutes would be very beneficial. But you win in March with good guard play, and if Tominaga gets on a heater and Hoiberg hits some key threes, that's and Williams and Lawrence. I mean, they've got the guards. If they all come together at once, that's a team that could make a little bit of a run.
Yeah, Jamarcus Lawrence is going to be a key for March.
Mm-hmm.
We're just putting Nebraska in the tournament now, and they can play their way out, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think we've seen Fred's teams the last 2 years finish strong, and I think they're poised to finish strong again. So I'm putting them in, possibly a 9th guy could be Eli Rice, who the freshman wing who's been dinged up. He might make it back. They have a week off between Rutgers and Michigan before the regular season finale. And then, depending on what kind of position they're in, you might be able to rest some guys a bit in Minneapolis, and you could have a double bye, which would give you a little bit of rest. But I think this team is in about as good a shape as you could hope. Now there's time left for things to go awry, but I like the position that they're in, and it's by design. The way this hasn't happened by accident. Hoiberg has done a nice job, even with teams that lost more games than they won for the majority of the past 2 seasons. they were playing good basketball when March rolled around. So if you infuse that style with a team that's clearly better this year, we'll see what the results are. It could be something that makes Nebraska fans pretty happy.
And one thing to note here with Beilein's comments that I've been thinking about this, because he had two different teams, if I remember correctly, that lost in the national championship game. I know it was at least two that made it to the Final Four, because there was that one team that had Jordan Poole that was like really good. They were top 10 all season long. I don't think that's the team he was comparing him to. I think it was the team from almost a decade ago, the one with Trey Burke. Hardaway Jr. was on that team, Stauskas, Levert. I think all those guys played together. I think that's the team he's comparing to, because that was a team that I remember finishing middle of the road in the Big Ten and really surprising some people in the NCAA tournament. And I've seen some people out there, just quickly, we mentioned Beilein's comments, so I need to get this off my chest. I've seen people compare it to that team of, I think, 2017, 2018, the one that bounced Nebraska in the Big Ten tourney. That team was really freaking good. I don't think that's the team Beilein's comparing it to, despite the fact that he said a couple seasons ago. I think the older you get, a couple seasons ago can be a decade. It's that 2012, 2013 team. I have it looked up now. That is the team I think he's referring to whenever he's saying this Nebraska team reminds me of a team we had a couple years ago.
Either way, I think Nebraska would enjoy the comparison to any team that made it to the national championship game.
Yeah, and most teams that Beilein put on the hardwood, be it at West Virginia or Michigan. Guys, you have more reality TV to indulge during winter conditioning. Let's dive into Chasing Three for a moment. We'll get to some Husker baseball as well, but pretty cool episode. Now, truth be told, I've not made it all the way through episode 1, but I've seen enough so far that's super impressive. Bill, I know you checked it out. Elijah, if you haven't, I know you will. And then I know, Mitch, you were looking at it. But really, the microscope in on Nebraska's standard and also just two guys that Nebraska fans are excited to see coming back, and that's the Polar Bear, Nash Hutmacher, and Ty Robinson. Really cool extended features on both of them. And Mitch, just what a painting behind the scenes this show has shown of the Polar Bear and all he went through because he loves wrestling that much.
Yeah, first, Nebraska fans are just lucky to have the people who put this together. Matt Rule has talked about this going back to the documentary series that they did in training camp in the dorms, and that was impressive. I think this is the most impressive production that I've seen yet, and it's just one episode. I'm looking forward to the rest of the series coming out. It's just so well done, and I understand Nebraska's got a lot of resources. This is not like a rinky-dink television operation. It's more like Netflix or HBO in the way that they can put this stuff together. But everything from the music to the camera angles and the way the interviews flow together, it's all just extremely well done. So like, if you haven't checked it out, people who are watching or listening to this, I'd really recommend it because it's just fun to watch and to be able to see the behind the scenes stuff. And of course, they have unfettered, amazing access to all of the people that you would ever want to hear from regarding these players and their stories. And yeah, Nash Hutmacher is a huge part of this. You get to hear from his parents, Joe and Laura. And side note, Joe Hutmacher, he did not make weight at 285 for the Nebraska wrestling team. Joe, I've met Joe and spent a day up in South Dakota when Nash was being recruited, and he is a former football player himself. Yeah, Joe, you see where Nash gets his girth. Joe doesn't fit in the shirt that he's wearing in the episode, but a great guy to hear and see on video in that. And then some of the other behind the scenes people that we don't always get to hear from, who are just stars in their own right in the Nebraska football universe, like Kristen Coggan. She's featured heavily in this episode, the nutritionist that Nebraska brought from South Carolina last year. The work that she does, and like Mitch Cholowinski with sports science, and I've written about him. Corey Campbell's the strength coach is in this quite a bit. So it just provides an incredible lens into the Nebraska football operation. Hearing from the parents on the day where they dropped their kids off at the freshman parents and one of the transfer parents on the day that they dropped their kids off for college when they should be seniors in high school is incredible in its own right. It's the kind of access that we in the regular media would just kill for, but never get. So it's pretty awesome to see.
What's so impressive about it, the quality, no doubt, and the access is phenomenal. But what's impressive is the way Nebraska is able to utilize another tool in its arsenal for recruiting. Yeah, that show is for Husker fans. Yeah, it's for football fans because it is definitely Hard Knocks like on par with that. The only thing missing from the Nebraska shows is the narration of Liv Schreiber. You don't have a lot of narration, but there's just enough to carry it, from one story to the next. Nebraska doesn't have that, but they get plenty of audio access from the players and those who are interviewed. But make no mistake about it, that is a show that is targeted at moms and dads.
Yeah.
Okay. Of the potential recruits. You may not be able to get into the living room during dead periods or whatever, but the moms and dads of top athletes that are prospective student athletes at the University of Nebraska, and maybe not just even football, but when they have those parents dropping off their sons in frigid Nebraska temperatures, and they've all got a smile on their face, when they sat them down talking about all that they were doing for their son that brought him to Nebraska and why he wanted to come to Nebraska, and saying that my son's going to be well taken care of. Willis McGahee, the fourth's mom,
I know.
talking
I was thinking
about
the same thing.
All of that is for moms and dads to see how their sons are going to be treated, how they're going to be treated when they come on campus. Danny Kalen's mom saying, I have 15 people I can call at any time. You have the nutritionist. They're showing them how to cook. What else am I missing? And then just the parent testimonials. It is one incredible recruiting tool, 365 for Nebraska football and Nebraska athletics.
Anyone made chicken parm? Elijah, you're kind of a food dude. Mitch, Bill, I mean, could
I've made chicken cutlets, but not chicken parm. It's a slight difference, but it's not a true chicken parm.
But they're doing a workshop on. Same here. But they're doing a workshop on how to do chicken parm with 40 football players. It's pretty cool.
My big thing on chicken parm, complete aside here, but the one thing that can ruin a chicken parm is if you let that tomato sauce sit on the chicken cutlet for too long, because what happens, it loses the crispiness. That's a key to a chicken parm, having never made one before in my life. You can tell the difference, though, if you melt the cheese, the sauce on last minute, and just throw it under the broiler and get it just barely melted. It will keep its crispiness that way. It's just a slight thing from a foodie that has never made chicken parm.
Yeah, well,
before.
Elijah, look, you are a quality football player in your own right, okay? But if you had been better, you would now know how to make appropriate chicken parmesan appropriately, okay? Because they are giving a world-class tutorial to do it in a healthful way, I might add. So,
and the thing that I'm sure we'll hear later in the series about while we're on the subject of cooking, they haven't even moved the training table into the new facility yet. That's still to come later this year. So all of this stuff is going on in like the old, the rinky-dink operations over there at Memorial Stadium. Like they don't even I don't know how they can even produce a meal out of the the facilities, the multi-million-dollar facilities that they're forced to use right now. But when they move across that part of campus into the new building, the food preparation area is along with the weight room and the recovery and everything really. But the food area is one that I heard from the very beginning was set to receive as big of an upgrade as anything. So I'm sure that's a recruiting tool in its own right, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that as the series goes on.
Didn't Matt Rule say last year that this is something that we're going to do now, but we probably won't do it again in the future? when they did the 6-part series or something. There's no way they can not do this year in and year out.
This part, I think he was referring more to like the behind the scenes training camp stuff, in season, the stuff that they're doing now.
Either way,
with winter conditioning, and this does stretch a little bit back into November. There were some portions of it that went into November, but yeah, I think this is one of those things where like the train is out of the station. You can't give Nebraska fans this and then take it away.
Especially if you're going to be asking to put in, a little addition into the South Stadium here in a couple of years.
And one of the things to note with this video series is I want to highlight one of the guys that's behind the camera. You'll never see him. Jordan Litton is his name. And I know he's been working on these videos for years now. He's still a student at UNL. I believe he's scheduled to graduate this spring, if I remember correctly. But he was
not if I have anything to do with it.
Wow. The vengeful professor.
Too valuable.
Bill's keeping him around. He's going to get a call from Matt Rule. Hey, I know that he's set to graduate next week, but I need a favor.
His work is excellent. We can't argue. But has he given you any attitude?
Something tells me that Jordan will not be leaving Nebraska next season. Maybe he gets a great job, and if he does, he fully deserves it. But this is a guy that started his own YouTube channel back in high school and would drive around the state of Texas, which I don't know much about Texas, but I know it's freaking massive. He would drive across the state of Texas on Fridays and go do these cinematic recaps of the top high school football games in the state. He'd post them up on YouTube. They get tens of thousands of views. Nebraska noticed him as a high schooler, and it's not to the same levels of football recruiting, but some people in the creative media office, I believe Ora Garst, who's no longer with the football program, but he kind of took charge on this, was like, I want to have this kid on our creative media team, goes down to Texas, and recruiting's the best word to use for it, though it's probably not perfect, goes and gets Jordan up to Nebraska, and they've gotten 5 years of videos from Jordan. I know he was one of the brainchilds behind the fall series video. I don't know for certain, but I can assume that he's played a big piece in this spring video series as well. An incredibly talented guy that Nebraska went and pulled. And you see the results of having a creative media team like that. Is it a 5-star quarterback? No. But the behind the scenes look that you get by going and getting a really talented creative mind, bring him into the football program, get him a degree, underpay him for 5 years, most likely, and get these kind of videos, high quality, have the confidence to go to Matt Rule and say, I have this idea for something we can do during the season, and Matt Rule to say, I am all on board with this. And just a behind-the-scenes thing that you'll never hear the story on, but I think it's really interesting that you have a 22-year-old kid, essentially, for lack of a better term, that's going out there and making these videos and just giving Husker fans everywhere a behind-the-scenes look at this program under Rule.
You might hear the story on it, Elijah. I think it's possible that there could be a story about that whole operation. And Matt Rule went out of his way multiple times before the season to talk about Jordan and just how much he trusted him to be able to do whatever he wanted. He had carte blanche to those guys when he was talking specifically about the preseason production that they did. Nebraska would be well served to find a home for him on its full-time staff when he gets his degree. But as much resources as they have in the Nebraska athletic department, I don't know that it can match Amazon or Apple, and they might be competing against corporations like that to keep that kind of a talent in Lincoln.
I just remember we're being an employee at Husker Vision. We worked with creative media. We weren't in type, but I remember this kid Jordan coming in. He's got a big head. He thinks he's all of that, and kind of rubbed us the wrong way. And then we saw his videos. We went, okay, you know what? This kid deserves it. He can have a big head if he wants to. He's the most talented person on this team.
Elijah Herbel, Bill Doleman, and Mitch Sherman. Chris Schmidt with you. It's the Average Joe Sports Show at AJ Sports Pod, at AJ Sports Show. Do that on YouTube, the AJ Sports Pod, on Twitter. Give us a follow, find us, subscribe, and also find on Spotify and iTunes. Guys, we'll wind down here. A couple of minutes. Husker Baseball off to the College of Charleston later this week. A good bounce-back series, 3-1 against Grand Canyon University. Little snippy, a little chippy on the Saturday night, but Nebraska held on to win the series Sunday. Still some work to do in the bullpen. Not a perfect or finished product, but pitching staff, at least some of the starting pitching, if we look at some of the Friday numbers anyway, have been decent. And, a work in progress, but this team looks to be ready to fight a lot of the season. And we'll know more as Big Ten action gets here, but more warm weather, and never been to Charleston, although I'd like to go. I hear it's cool.
You don't need to go to Charleston for warm weather. It's 80 degrees
outside
today this week. Yeah.
Well, for a day, and then we're going to get slapped in the face with 40s and 50s. But I know what you're saying.
Don't talk about that. I think it's supposed to be nice again on the weekend. They could have had a home series here at the beginning of March. Of course, Will Bolt would never, ever in a million years know that when they put the schedule together back last summer. But I liked that, and I watched quite a bit of the Grand Canyon series. First of all, Grand Canyon is a good baseball program there in Phoenix. I think we maybe talked about this some last episode, so I won't belabor this point. But the Lopes did beat Ohio State and USC in the first weekend of the regular season. So then for Nebraska to go in there and take 3 out of 4, it kind of reminded me a little bit of a conference series instead of a non-conference series because of the intensity of some of the stuff. And Grand Canyon didn't take kindly, I don't think, to Nebraska fans coming into their stadium. And this is Phoenix, so it's like one of Nebraska's many homes away from home when it comes to Husker Nation. And you could hear on the radio broadcast and on the TV broadcast there was a sizable contingent of people in red at those games. So I think that caused a little bit of animosity, and then just the way that Nebraska played and the way that GCU played, they were back and forth, especially after those first 2 games that were dominated by the Huskers. Grand Canyon didn't take kindly to that also. And Saturday was, as you said, chippy. And then you had Sunday, the finale, where Nebraska had an opportunity to really get out of there with something substantial as far as helping its early season cause. And that 8th inning with the steal of home by Dylan Carey, that was big time. That's the kind of stuff that you're going to have to do to be able to win those tough midweek games against teams like Creighton and Kansas and Kansas State. And on Sundays in the Big Ten when a series is on the line. So positive signs for Nebraska that when it had its back against the wall at times, especially in that series finale, that the Huskers found a way to get it done. Unlike what we saw on the first weekend when they lost in the 9th inning against Texas Tech in Oklahoma.
2-2 there would have been good. 3-1 there, I think is great, especially to come back after losing Game 3 and then to be in a fight in Game 4, almost literally after Game 3. But to go 3-1 down there, I thought was significant. Grand Canyon shouldn't feel bad. If Nebraska played at Arizona State, Husker fans would have outnumbered Sun Devil fans there too. So, just it comes with the territory living in a Nebraska suburb as they do. But that the Carey steal of home is it's like the Hoiberg steal. It's just one of those plays that's just heads up. And it's not so much that he stole home. It's the way that he did it, noticing the lazy toss back to the pitcher and just taking that tip.
Smart, aggressive baseball.
Yeah, and it's stealing home is great. It's one of the most exciting plays in baseball. But to do it with the observational skills and saying, in that moment, I can do this, and he did it. And I think that's a tone setter for the first few weeks. Baseball is a long season, but plays like that are what win you games and win you series. And so Nebraska's 11 of 15 in stolen bases. They have not had a stolen base attempt against them in the first 7 games of the season, but they're 11 of 15. Now the starting pitching, I think, is not off to a great start. They've got Sears is 2 starts and sub-1 with his ERA, but the other 2 are north of 5. Mm-hmm. So the bullpen has done a fairly decent job, and I loved Kyle Perry. The guy's as old as we are, and older than Elijah. But to see him get that last out, he had a little blue streak to him when he stepped on first, and then the hug with him and with Will Bolt. I love the scene. That guy's been through a lot. He didn't have to come back and play, and yet he's made 4 appearances for that team. If anybody's going to gut out this season, it's going to be Kyle Perry, and I just thought that was a cool moment.
One thing to note: let's get our facts in order. Kyle Perry is 1 year younger than me. So.
I like that. I like the depth that they've shown on the mound on Sunday. Fourth game in 4 days to be able to roll out the arms the way that they did. And that's why they ended up winning that game, is because they were able to hold Grand Canyon down offensively after Grand Canyon came back from an 8-1 deficit to make it 8-8. At that point, you think the home team came back from 7 runs down to tie it. You're going into the last 3 innings. They're trying to even this series at 2 games apiece. Everything else being equal, the home team is going to win that game. They got the last at bat. The other team's thinking about getting on a plane and flying back home. But the reason that Nebraska won it, in addition to that aggressive play in the 8th inning on the bases, was because of the relief pitching and the depth that they've developed, which is a big upgrade early in the season, but a big upgrade over what happened last year. That's a huge part of the reason, lack of depth on the mound, that Nebraska missed out on the postseason a year ago, because they couldn't do it in the midweek. They couldn't do it on Sunday in the Big Ten. So that's super encouraging to have seen like a Jalen Wordley come in and pitch late in a game on Sunday. Ty Horn, a freshman out of Kansas. I really liked what he looked like on the mound, just his makeup, his confidence, like he has a live arm. An aggressive mentality. A lot of their pitchers are just like right back up on the rubber as soon as they get the ball back from the catcher and, taking the action to the opposing hitters. Now they get into the Big Ten, teams are going to play games. Teams are going to try to slow that momentum and that rhythm down. But, you can see Rob Childress's influence on his pitching staff right off the bat. I mean, I've watched a lot of Rob Childress baseball, much of it many years ago. But his stamp is all over this pitching staff through 2 weekends. And
they will be tested in Charleston. I think Charleston might be unbeaten. Wow. And I think they've scored, I think in their 6 or 7 games, they've scored double figures 3 times. They've scored more than 8 in most of their games. I think they beat Ohio State. I mean, they've Ohio State
7-0.
Yeah, they're so, and they're at home. This will be a test for the pitching staff, and this is look. You go 3-1 in Grand Canyon. This, I think, 1-3 there would be a bad turnaround. They got to go 2-2 there. They just got to keep it going. 2-2 there, 3-1 if they can. Yeah,
the state of South Carolina plays some great college baseball between the 2 big schools, of course, and then Coastal Carolina and College of Charleston. So. For the per capita, it might be the best, some of the best high school baseball in the country.
I don't have many points to make on Husker baseball. You guys pretty much took them all away from me, so credit to you guys. You guys nailed it. One thing I will say is 2 things can be true at once. 1, Grand Canyon is a good baseball program, but 2, Nebraska was expected to beat them and should have beaten them in a series this weekend. You're able to out-recruit them. You have more resources than them. They've made the NCAA tournament a couple times. They've built a great program. All that being said, with the resources and support and money that Nebraska puts into its baseball program, it went down to Phoenix and did what it was supposed to do. It showed good heart. The pitching staff did well. I think we learned that this team is willing to fight in close ball games. They're willing to go out and make winning plays. Does that translate to the Big Ten? Time will tell, but Nebraska went and took care of business. The one key point that I have to make comes from my umpiring background, and I would just like to say, if you didn't have any problem with Brett Sears being fired up as he walked off the mound on Friday night, you can't have a problem with the Grand Canyon pitcher being fired up as he walked into the bullpen. And I know Schmidt's going to have a problem with it. I can see the look in his eyes. He's going to make a counterpoint. But Brett Sears did it on the field. The Grand Canyon pitcher did it in his dugout. Did he take it up a notch? Sure. But in your own dugout, not directed towards the other team, just being fired up with your teammates, I don't think you can have a problem with that. I know Will Bolt came out and had a problem with it, but Sears had that same kind of emotion on Friday as he was walking off the mound whenever he got out of an inning. He did it on the field. The Grand Canyon pitcher did it in the dugout. So, honestly, I don't see how you can have a problem with that.
I don't have a problem. You made a solid argument for the time and place. You as the umpire with the umpire mustache say what? Do you warn? Do you let it continue on? How do you handle it?
It depends. If you're celebrating with your teammates, I'm not going to warn you. You have the right to be fired up playing a game. If it reaches a point where I'm worried about escalation, where the other team's getting involved, where you're directing stuff at the other team, trying to go to reaction out of them, that's where I'll go warn. That's where the high school level, they have us restrict coaches and players to the dugout. I can do that. If you're keeping it within your own team, your reaction is towards your team, it's not towards the other team, I'm not going to warn you.
Respect his authority.
If the other team has a reaction because you're fired up with your teammates, that is on the other team. And I come from a younger baseball lineage. I'm more among the modern generation in terms of celebrating in baseball.
You like the bat flip?
I love a bat flip. Why not? You're not showing up a pitcher. You're being excited for yourself and your own accomplishment. If you throw the bat at the pitcher, yeah, we have some problems. But no, you have a right to be fired up and excited while playing baseball, as long as you aren't doing it in a way that is disrespecting the other team or trying to goad the other team into a fight. I don't think we saw that from Grand Canyon on Saturday. Therefore, I have zero problem with it.
I like a little fire in my February baseball. And so this is fine. The stuff that happened down there in Arizona is fine. It just prepares Nebraska for what it's going to see. The Big Ten is a lot of things in baseball, and it's not a league that wins national championships and sends loads of players to the first round of the MLB draft and appears in Omaha on a regular basis. But one thing that it does have is a lot of competitive juices, and it has fiery games. And Nebraska will see it week in, week out. And I think that's something that the Huskers as a program underestimated when they came into the league. They thought, hey, this is not the same as the Big 12 with the high level of talent. So we can just kind of walk through things, and you can't, and you're going to get punched in the face by teams in the Big Ten. It will come after you. And it's the same way in those games where you play Creighton every year. There's nobody more fired up to strike out a Husker than a Creighton pitcher, and they'll walk off the field pumping fists all night. So it's good that they got a taste of this in the second week of the year.
That'll wind us down for episode 32 of the Average Joe Sports Show. Bill Doleman, Mitch Sherman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks for tuning in.